wind-up island of Sodor, some things never changed. One of those things was Duncan. Despite various warnings from the fat and thin controllers, Duncan had over 4 major accidents because he rock and rolled too hard on the rails. Hey Duncan, lovely summer's day, isn't it? I have grumpy old passengers. It is not a good day. Okay then, Duncan. If you say so. He was also rude to passengers and engines alike, and had no time for, as he called it, fuddy-duddying around. What a bad railway this is. He's so rude. Well, if you don't like it, walk. And with that, Duncan rolled out of the station, rocking and rolling harder than before. Just then, as he passed through the tunnel portal, his rocking and rolling pushed him off the rails. Oh, these rails. I told them it wasn't bastard enough. Once he was back on the tracks, Duncan puffed into the yards, angrier than ever. Oh, I've told them they're spending too much time on the main line and not enough rebalancing our tracks. That's why I derailed. Oh, Duncan, when will you learn this is your fault? You can't blame everyone else for your own reckless mistakes. Duncan, you're reckless and rude. Just deal with it. Isn't that right, Mac? On the money there, Mighty. This Duncan's just got a bad attitude. Fuddy-duddy engines. No one takes me seriously. Look, Duncan, I'll raise it with the fat controller, but don't expect any results. You're the one who keeps misbehaving. Just as I thought. No one listens to me. No one cares about me. With that, Duncan chuffed away, just as the fat controller arrived. I'm having numerous reports of Duncan rocking and rolling his passengers to near death. Yes, sir. Duncan insists that there's something wrong with the ballasting of the track, but I just think it's his bad temperament. I know Duncan's prone to complain, but he could be right. It's been quite many years since we've reballasted the narrow gauge lines. Mighty Mac, tell Duncan I'm planning a scheduled maintenance train to just check it out. Maybe that'll get him to behave better. Can do, sir. Speaking of ballasting, it was all hands on deck on the Little Western and the Arsdale Railway, where a mainline reconstruction program had been initiated, meaning that Molly, Oliver and Douglas had to work full-time to deliver ballast up and down Sodor's main lines. Bust my buffers! We haven't stopped all week, and I don't think it's going to let up for at least another month. Clearly you haven't had time for a clean. Sounds like you've got soot stuck up your funnel. I'm just excited to be having on-screen appearances after the great discovery. Well, whatever happens, the Fat Controller's given us a very important job, and we have to work really hard. Otherwise, the entire railway will be thrown into chaos. After the incident with the minis, the safety inspectors had come to Sodor and had insisted that the entire main line be replaced. That meant that all the trains had to slow as the engines worked hard, pushing and pulling the trucks into position and collecting stone from the small railway. The next day, Duncan arrived to take his first train and noticed immediately that nothing had been done about the ballast. Of course! No one takes me seriously. I told them so, but they didn't want to listen. At that moment, a semi-familiar diesel pulled into the yards. Hello, Duncan. I heard about your accident yesterday. Such a shame they haven't maintained the rails like they should have. That's because no one believes me. They all think it's my fault, my this, my that. It's a shame, really. If only they knew you only wanted the best for this railway. I do! I want to make this railway great again. Make Sodor great again. The mainline engines just don't understand the struggles of the narrow gauge. You can say that again. If only there was some way I could take control of this railway, then we'd be back where we're supposed to be. Well, XtremeTrainz only has Skarloey and Mighty Mac. So if something will happen to both those engines, and the thin and fat controllers, you would be in charge of the narrow gauge railway. George, what are you talking about? It's not like we have elections on this railway. I can't just depose them. But it would be a shame if there was an accident, wouldn't it? Before they could continue, Duncan, mate, what you doing? You've got to get those cars to Blue Mountain Quarry pronto. But I was in the middle of a conversation. See you later, Dodge, grumbled Duncan as he chuffed off to the Blue Mountain Quarry at the behest of the station master, with a lot to think about. Now everything is in place. I just need to grab those freight cars. The next morning, the maintenance train was ready to depart. SacredWolfie had 2 wagons in tow, a passenger coach for the thin and fat controllers, and a special maintenance wagon which could detect all kinds of errors in the track alignment, such as loose ballast. However, the machinery in the wagon was very heavy, and so to traverse the steep hills, Mighty Mac was the back engine for the train. Alrighty sirs, we're ready to go when you are. Fantastic, SacredWolfie. Hopefully this will be a waste of time, but if anything, it'll put Duncan at ease. We need him for the tourist trains. I think this is a waste of time, but if you say so, sir. Meanwhile, Duncan had stopped at the top of the hill with some empty freight cars from the Blue Mountain Quarry, where he could see the engines in the transfer yards. They're not doing anything at all! Sitting around talking and fuddy-duddying, I'm not surprised! Then, Duncan remembered what he'd been told yesterday. An idea flew into his funnel. Because TOMY wind-up engines don't have front couplings, there was nothing connecting the trucks to Duncan.
Hey, what are you doing, Duncan? We want to get to the transfer yards!
Don't worry, you will get to the transfer yards. Just a little bit faster than you anticipated. Ha! Duncan surged forward, pushing the trucks down the hill. Alright everyone, here we... Hang on a minute. Can you hear something?
Help us!
Bust my buffers! To make matters worse, the 2 oil cars that had been left on the transfer yard siding hadn't had their lids screwed on and were leaking fuel across the yards. Cinders and ashes. No, literally! Oh, oops. Luckily, no one had been killed in the explosion, but the fat and thin controllers had been badly hurt and had to be taken to hospital, while SacredWolfie and Mighty Mac would need a long time in the steamworks to be fully operational again. Thomas and Toby arrived to help clean up the mess.
That's such poor railway design. No engine should be able to push any wagons when they don't have front couplings.
Well then, that procedure will stop under the charge of Duncan as manager of the narrow gauge railway. Duncan, managing a railway is very complicated. Far more complicated than you can probably understand. Are you sure you don't need some help?
Yes, indeed. My branch line is a handful, let alone an entire railway.
Thanks, Thomas and Toby, but I'll be fine. I'm going to make the narrow gauge great again, and then all of Sodor.
Make great again. Where have I heard that before? Oh well, come on, Toby. We've got to clean up this mess.
As Oliver pulled into the transfer yards, he noticed that Duncan, being the only running engine, was coupled up to a mixed goods train with passenger and freight wagons.
Hello, Duncan. I've brought the ballast with me so you can redo the railway lines in the transfer yards. Then you should be back to running as normal.
Ugh, and hopefully next time you'll sound more normal. No, that's not enough. Oliver, you need to redirect all the ballast to the narrow gauge line. That's what caused the accident.
Really?
I thought it was a loose freight car. Yes, but it was made loose by bumpy rails because of poor ballasting. The Fat and Thin controllers were here and they requested, as their last request, that it was completed on time right now.
Well, I suppose if you say it's their last request, I'll tell the other engines. We'll be right on it.
Without delay, Molly and Oliver redirected all the ballast meant for the main lines to the narrow gauge lines so they could be repaired and reballasted, as Duncan, and apparently the Fat controllers, had requested. However, after a few weeks, Stanley had to be rostered to take one of the trains, and when he arrived, he had a few questions for Duncan. Duncan, there's enough ballast here to redo not just the narrow gauge line, but half of the main line as well. Surely this is enough stone. Nope, it's not enough. If you had a look at these tracks, you'd see they're still in terrible disrepair. Keep it coming. Fat controller's orders. But Duncan, the Fat controller also ordered the main line replacement scheme. Surely he wouldn't order both at once. Well, I've got to go. I've got to deliver some trucks to a shed. And with that, Duncan quickly chuffed off. I think it's time we paid the Fat controller a visit. Toby had collected some spare parts for the Arsdale mine and was heading there with great haste when he felt a strange rumbling under his axles. Oh dear, this does seem to be a bumpy ride today. Then, up ahead, it happened. Just as Toby approached, the ballast crumbled away and the tracks separated, sending Toby plunging off the line. Driver, fireman, quickly! You must warn the engines and close the line. The truck is fouling the tracks.
But it was too late. Just round the bend was Thomas with Annie and Clarabelle heading to Knapford Station.
Bust my buffers! We'll never stop in time!
Thankfully, none of Thomas's passengers was seriously hurt, although some of them did need to be treated for minor scrapes and bruises. However, now it was very clear that the main line on the island of Sodor had to be closed for repair. With the main lines on the island of Sodor closed until further notice, confusion and delay reigned. Percy, you must let me through. I have to deliver these trucks.
No, Edward, I've been taking the mail. That's my job. Get out of my way.
Emily, please. I've got to take these wagons to the transfer yards. I don't think so. These fuel wagons have to get to the depot. Oh dear, we've got a wee bit of a problem. There is no way near enough ballast to cover the main line and what Duncan needs on the narrow gauge. But we can't just stop taking it to Duncan. It was the Fat Controller's last orders. I don't think we got much of a choice, engines. We've got to clear this mess, and the only way we can do that is by reopening the main lines. I've got a plan. You three worry about getting ballast and repairing these tracks. I'm going to head up and talk to Duncan. Something seems fishy about all of this. The Blue Mountain Quarry was a busy place, and the lifeblood of the narrow gauge railway. Duncan was en route to collect another train of stone to be taken down to the docks and shipped to faraway locations.
I don't need more ballast, Stanley was right, but it's time those mainline engines learned what it's like. It's time to put the narrow gauge first. Make the narrow gauge great again. Make the narrow gauge great again. Wait a second, what's that up ahead?
Sure enough, the turntable, which acted like a gate to the quarry, was set on stop.
I can't stop in time! Open the gates!
But no one did, and Duncan crashed off the rails.
What's the meaning of this? Without me, you'll have no engines to deliver your precious stone to other countries.
As if on cue, Elizabeth rolled into frame, bringing with her the quarry manager.
Oh, Duncan, speaking of profits, we've had no payments for the sale of our stone since you took over this railway, and I'm sorry, but it's not good enough. This isn't a charity, this is a business, and if your railway isn't going to pay for the goods that they're stealing from me, then I'll happily get the lorries to take them for you. What? I'm not in charge of that. That's the job of the... Oh.
You can't get away with just doing one thing when you're in charge of a multifaceted operation. It's just not good enough. The Fat Controller will hear about this, and when he does, I'm sure you'll be in plenty of trouble.
But I just wanted to make the railway great again.
Elizabeth smiled.
And all you've done is cause confusion and delay. Come on, let me get you back to the transfer yard so they can take you to the steamworks.
By the time Edward had arrived at the transfer yards, he'd heard about the calamity with Duncan and had a flatbed ready to take him to the steamworks when he arrived. Oh, Duncan, haven't you seen the error in your ways? You can't just take control of things you don't understand.
But no one was listening to me. No one ever takes me seriously. They don't think my problems are important enough for the elite mainline engines.
Duncan, the other engines and the Fat Controller will take you seriously if you're not so nasty and disrespectful all the time.
Me? Disrespectful? Fuddy-duddy nonsense. How? That.
And Duncan, you have to realize the world is a complicated place. There aren't always simple answers, and the way to deal with that is not to get angry at everyone, but to have proper conversations, instead of flying off the handle and trying to take things into your own hands. As Edward pulled into the steamworks, Duncan stayed silent, but started to realize that maybe, just maybe, he had been rocking and rolling a little too hard. At the opposite end of Sodor, Diesel 10 was eagerly awaiting his minions at the diesel works.
Tell me, my friends, how has Duncan fared? Is the narrow gauge really great again?
No, sir. There's been a bit of a,
What he means is that there's been a slight complication, and, everyone hatched on to the fact that Duncan was talking nonsense. That's no worries at all. But tell me, Sodor did close down, didn't it? The main lines were useless.
Why, yes, sir. They, only just reopened part of the Brain branch to Vickerstown and to the mainland. Why is that a good thing?
Because thanks to the good work of Dodge in making sure the lids of those diesel wagons were left unscrewed, now I've managed to smuggle the parts I need to create the ultimate weapon, which will finish off the steamies on this railway once and for all.
Finish them? I thought we were just going to make them our slave engines.
Oh no, Splodge. Our friends have got something far more devilish planned for them.